with an interesting topic as well. Now, see, Pat, you do all this, I take your papers and we need mine. Okay, there. Here we are. Our second speaker today is Pat Croal. For her birthday is presidential inauguration. How about that? What day is that? We don't know yet, do we? Do we have the date for 2020?
No, it's always Sunday.
Always the same date, okay, even if it's on a Sunday? Today, Pat is celebrating the birthday of Johanna, August 23rd, 1893. Over the years, she has been learning more about her family through the study of genealogy and hearing so that she may, and hearing stories so that she may share them. It helps her and her family members know each other more. Pat is working from the Dynamic Leadership Pathways, project number 3, Connect with Storytelling. The title of her story is Getting to Know Me. Getting to Know Me. Let's welcome Pat Croal.
Well, my alternative beginning to my speech is, who knows when presidential inauguration day is? Jackie.
January 20th.
Well, yes, always January 20th. So yeah, that's my birthday. That's usually how I tell people it's my birthday, presidential inauguration day. Obviously, we only have a new president every 4 years, so.
You have a birthday.
You only have a birthday every 4 years.
Thus, I'm about 13. So today we are celebrating. I'm celebrating and recognizing Johanna's birthday. Johanna Peterson Linnell. Her birthday is and was August 23rd, 1893. Does anyone know Johanna? Maybe you've heard me talk about her before, but let me tell you a little bit about her and kind of walk you down the path of who Johanna is and why she's so important to me and my family. So the story starts 1893, and actually really it starts before 1893 when Johanna's parents, immigrated to the United States. Her parents were Elof and Mary Peterson, and they immigrated from Denmark and Sweden. They immigrated much earlier. Johanna was born in 1893. She was the third child of 8 children that they had in the family. They resided in Faribault County, in sort of just west of here a little bit, south and west of here a little bit. And Johanna was a lively young child. I don't have many stories from those days because my search and story really is about reviewing records from Ancestry.com, other ancestry sites, and a lot of family stories that come through the years. And there's an important bit of information I'm going to share with you about Johanna as we learn about her. But the first time I came across Johanna in paperwork is through the old-fashioned way of determining and searching for information called microfiche. Microfiche here, printed out from a microfiche printer reader. So back in the mid-'80s, my mother decided that she needed to find out some information about her past. And this story really connects Johanna to my mother because Johanna was the biological mother of my mom. So she's my grandmother. So Johanna, after being born and being raised by her family, she, upon the age of being in her late 20s, had somewhat of a difficult life. And she, from what I can tell, was experiencing mental illness and some other issues that made her need some extra care in her life. So in the 1900 census, when I first came across Johanna, she was about age 6 to 7. The next time I came across her is in the 1920 census, where she was at the hospital called the Faribault Hospital for the Feeble-Minded. That's what the state hospitals were known by back in those days. And it may make you shudder a little bit. I remember when I first read this information, it made me shudder a little bit. It's like, well, why was she there? I don't know her diagnosis, but I do know that she was in an area where young women were housed in this hospital. And I know there's more information to be found at some point. But she was in this hospital. And then the next time I came across her is when my mom did some microfiche reading and understanding where Johanna was in those years. So Johanna was in the Faribault Hospital for Feeble-Minded in the 1930 census, the 1920 census, and the 1930 census. And this is information that you and I or anybody can find. It's all public information when we can find out where somebody was at any given time during the census. And you know, this next year is a census year, so we learn a lot with census, the census information. So she was in the Faribault Hospital for the Feeble-Minded. At some point in her late 20s, and it was very common for women, especially that were not married, did not have a job, what some people thought has no prospects, to send them to a hospital or an institution, so to help them in some way. This was a sign of the times, not necessarily how we do it today. So Johanna, at some point in that time frame, became pregnant with her first child. And what I can find out is she got married and she had her first child, and she was out of the hospital for a time. And her first child was Daniel, and Daniel was born in 1924 or 1928. And my mother came along in 1932. So at this time, Johanna was married to her then husband, and as the story goes, she still had her mental illness. She was known to wander away from home for days, weeks, and months at a time. And during this period of time is when she met what I have been told as a tall, dark, and handsome young man, not her husband. And she had a child, my mother, with this gentleman. I don't know who my mom's biological father is, but my mother was born in 1932. And Johanna still lived a life of mental illness, my understanding was. And she went back home occasionally. She raised my mom up to the age of about 1.5 years old. And then my mom was taken from her and put into a children's home to be adopted by a family who wanted a child. So that was in 1932 and 1934. So Johanna still was living a challenged life, dealing with mental illness and whatever else society was out there for her. And my mom comes along and then was a part of her life. My mom discovered that my grandma and grandpa adopted her, and surprisingly, by finding paperwork at the age of 14. Back in the day, oftentimes, most times, adoption was frowned upon. Oftentimes, when a family gives up a child for adoption or somebody adopts a child, the fact that they were adopted or given up for adoption was hidden. So my grandma and grandpa Edmonds, who adopted my mom, they have adoption papers they have adoption papers. They also have a birth certificate that says my mom was live born to them, and she was not. When my mom found out that she was adopted at age 14 by finding adoption paperwork, grandma and grandpa sat down and explained to my mom about where she came from and what the story was that they knew. They knew a little bit about Johanna, they knew what her name was, and they knew a little bit of information. So my mom sat on that information for many years, until about the early or mid-80s, because she promised my grandma that while she was living, she would not go out and search for her biological family. Well, my mom did. In the mid-80s, after grandma had passed, she went out and searched for Johanna, and Johanna was still living. Living in a nursing home in St. Paul, Minnesota. My mom went to start visiting her, And Johanna still suffered from mental illness, especially dementia. She was in her mid to late 80s at that time. And my mom started having a relationship with her. I met Johanna one time. My mom brought her home to Thanksgiving dinner one time. And I was in my 20s at the time. Oh, to go back to those years and grow up a little bit and have a relationship with my grandmother, which I did not do. But my mom brought her home. We all got a chance to meet her for the first time. She was a little short lady. And she never really understood for sure who my mom was, but she was a nice lady that came to visit her. Well, my mom, through the mid-80s and through 1990, my mom passed away at a fairly young age. My mom passed away at age 57 on Lou Gehrig's disease. And Johanna was still living. And message to the troops, visit your grandparents. My grandma, Johanna Linnell, was in a nursing home and she passed away in 1997, 7 years after my mother passed away. And I did not discover that until a few years ago and understand, oh my goodness. So there is one more twist to the story because this is about searching for family and getting to know who I am, who we are, help families understand where we came from. My mother's brother, Daniel, Johanna's firstborn, is still living in St. Paul, Minnesota at the age of 98 years old. And my goal is to bring him a fruit basket and sit down and have a discussion about family and birthdays and love. So that's my story. Remember Johanna.